do apologise. It was actually the internet decided to.
Right.
I'm logged on now. Brilliant.
Right. Good morning, everybody.
If it off and I disappear, it's the internet.
Andres, can you just go on mute, please, now?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is the licensing meeting being held on Wednesday, March the 17th. I'm the head of licensing of the licensing committee, and we have two members also on the licensing committee, Councillor John Rest and Councillor Nigel Lloyd. We have a legal advisor present, who's Miss Mushonga, and we also have some licensing representatives who are listening but are not allowed to participate. And then we have Linda Yaram, who is the committee administrator. Please bear in mind that this is being live streamed on YouTube. If you feel uncomfortable with that, please log out at this moment. So and I do apologise, we've got Lara Clara, who's the representative, the licensing representative for the council. So I'll put it over to you, please, Lara.
Good morning, everybody. We're here this morning for a review for a premises licence that's been applied for McDonald's Restaurant Limited.
Sorry, Lara. Would I be able to just explain to the panel and everyone involved the sort of this procedure for today? That's okay.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. So good morning. My name is Chida Mshonga and I'm the legal advisor in today's proceedings. We are here to consider an application for a premises license for McDonald's restaurant. Can I check that the applicant has a copy of the licensing officer's report at all?
Yes, we do. So I'm Philip Robson. I'm representing the applicant.
Sounds great. And I also note that the chairman has also noted today's attendances as well. So I'd just like to outline the procedure that will be followed in today's proceedings. So the licensing officer, Lara, will present her report to the subcommittee. Thereafter, the applicant, the other persons and members of the subcommittee will have an opportunity to ask any questions. The applicant would then have an opportunity to put forward their case, and then thereafter the floor will be open for any questions from all parties involved in today's proceedings. The applicant at this point will be able to call any sort of witnesses that they may have, and at that point the licensing officer, the other persons or their representatives, members of the subcommittee will have an opportunity to ask any questions. Thereafter, the other persons or their representatives will have an opportunity to present their case and call any witnesses, if they have any, to give evidence in support of it. Thereafter, the floor will be open from any questions from the licensing officer, the applicant, and members of the subcommittee. If the other persons have called a witness, there'll be an opportunity for the licensing officer, the applicant, and members of the subcommittee to raise any questions to the other person's witness. This process is repeated until all other persons who wish to make an oral representations have been given the opportunity to present their case. And just to remind all parties involved today, local objectors may not question each other. And then at the end of this process, there'll be an opportunity for all parties involved to address the panel and sum up what they consider are the really important points they would like the panel to take into account when making their decision. The panel will then retire to consider the application and make a decision. As today's proceedings are remote, the licensing officer, the Democratic Services Officer, the applicant, and other persons and their representatives will be asked to exit the Zoom meeting. As the panel's legal advisor, I will not be exiting this meeting. However, I'll be joining the subcommittee panel during their deliberation and provide any relevant advice surrounding the four licensing objectives. I will not be taking part in the decision making. However, I'll be assisting the panel with the formulation of facts and reasons for their decisions. All parties will receive written notification of the decision within 5 working days of the hearing as set out in the legislation. And as today's hearing is taking place remotely, it must be conducted as fairly as possible and in line with Article 6, which is the right to a fair hearing under the Human Rights Act 1998. And if at any time as well during today's proceedings, if any parties face any technical difficulties or unexpectedly leave the hearing will be adjourned until that person returns and all parties are present as well. And then finally, I would just like to raise a preliminary issue. And as a matter of preliminary, I draw the panel's attention to the fact that there are no responsible authorities that have made any objections to this application. And I hope that Lara will be able to confirm this as well.
I've received no objections from any relevant authorities.
Thank you. I will now pass the matter back to the chair.
Thank you, Chido. Right, so I think the first thing we'll do is we'll hear from the applicant. I think that is the correct procedure, isn't it? So please go ahead, either Mr. Robson or Miss Rayner.
Oh, sorry, Chair. The licensing officer.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Sorry, it was a very long.
I've got it already back to front, so that's a good start, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. So go ahead, please, Lara. I do apologise.
Good morning, everybody. As it's just been explained, we're here this morning to discuss the application for McDonald's restaurant, Middlebrook Way, Cromer. We've received an application that's been through a full 28-day public consultation period for what a licensable activity of late night refreshment from the hours of 11 p.m. till midnight daily. We received a couple of representations within the consultation period. We have from local residents, we had no adverse comments come in from any of the responsible authorities. The objections received from interested parties, the residents that live close by, were on public nuisance grounds. So that's why we're here today. Within your pack, there is the 2 relevant representations that we received, a plan of the premises and all the associated documentation to go with the application.
Thank you. So now, I'm assuming now it's for the representatives of McDonald's to put forward their case. I've got to try and get the order right here. So please go ahead, either Mr. Robson or Miss Rayner.
Thanks, Councillor. If you have, it may be easiest if you have your packs in front of you. At page 26 in my pack, I hope it's the same for you, which is the application documents and the work that McDonald's will do against the 4 licensing objectives.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, certainly in my document, anyhow.
I'm sure other members of the committee will indicate and wave frantically if they don't have the right documents. I don't think we have electronic hands, do we, on Zoom meetings? I think that's Teams. You get confused between all the different virtual meeting systems one has to use now, so it has to just be an actual hand waved vigorously. No doubt, Councillor and members of the committee, you'll be well aware that McDonald's has significant experience in managing, I think it's over 700 premises, many of course within North Norfolk that have late licenses. So this is a company that is not coming to this new and afresh. There is significant experience there. And that experience translates down from company level to the franchisee in terms of the training that's put in place for managers, much of which deals with meeting the 4 licensing objectives. And I'll get into those in due course. and then also specific level training for managers and members of staff to meet those objectives. Of course, it's not just about the members of staff, there's also some physical and technological responses that are put in place to meet the objectives. And the first you'll see for crime and disorder is CCTV at the bottom of page 26. This is a digital motion activated CCTV system. It means it's able to respond to movement within the area. It's maintained and recorded. And of course, McDonald's will assist the police wherever needed. And hopefully, of course, it won't be needed at all. Second is the Stay Safe system. Now one of the objectors has raised concerns around Stay Safe. This is, I think it's fair to describe it as almost an industry standard. It's used by McDonald's up and down the country. It's also used by many of the other fast food takeaway outlets. The way it operates is that there is a call centre in Scotland that can be accessed immediately by the manager or members of staff in McDonald's should an incident arise. That call centre then takes over the internal speaker system of McDonald's. And so, for example, can say, you in the blue jumper stood close to the counter, you've been asked to leave twice by the manager, you're now not leaving. You have a choice to either leave or I'll be calling the police immediately. And it works for two reasons. One which you may not expect, which is embarrassment. If you are the teenager stood at the counter playing the fool, and somebody speaks over a loudspeaker and clearly identifies you, every set of eyes within that McDonald's restaurant will turn to look at you. So not only do you feel embarrassed, you're also then very well aware there's a number of witnesses to whatever it is that you're doing. And that embarrassment factor, coupled with the fact that they then know they're being watched and recorded on CCTV, has proven in many McDonald's places to de-escalate situations, to calm things down, and the individual will leave. And of course, if they don't leave, there is the option of calling the police. And all the shift managers, in addition, have the relevant training to de-escalate situations. So the system is well known to McDonald's, the staff are well trained, it's proven to work, and hopefully it's never called on in Cromer, but if it is needed, it is there to assist. Public safety, you'll see under C on page 27. Safety systems are in place and close working with environmental health and local fire services. Again, staff training and the no open alcohol containers policy. Again, I think the objector raises a concern about how that will be policed. Well, it will be policed by members of staff. And again, they can take whatever action they deem necessary. And if somebody comes in with an open alcohol container, they can be refused to service, of course, asked to leave in a way that is not confrontational and reduces any potential escalation to crime and disorder and prevents any issues of public safety. On to the third licensing objective around public nuisance. The primary concern that we hear, and I've no doubt this committee has experience as well, but in other committees up and down the country and from residents, relates to litter. McDonald's takes its role very seriously, and there will be litter picking teams that will go out within a fairly wide area of the premises to pick litter. Not just McDonald's packaging, it's not selective litter picking. They'll pick up double-decker packages, Mars wrappers and Coke cans, as well as Big Mac wrappers. So it will have a general benefit. What I would say is to draw you to your licensing policy, which no doubt you'll be fully familiar with, around the responsibility of the premises. Responsibility can only go so far. They will do as much as they can to pick up and collect litter around the area. If individuals still choose to drop it, then that is beyond the control of McDonald's, and they can't be held responsible for everything. They will do what they can, and they will go beyond what is expected of a licensed premises. But there will occasionally be people who will still choose to throw litter. And of course, there are measures that can be put in place, fines, etc., that no doubt are enforced throughout Cromer being such an attractive tourist location. Noise, the doors are self-closing, which should limit noise escape from the premises. I always have a fantastic discussion with McDonald's before these, where they talk about the importance of the music in the premises. The music is not loud, the music is not brash. Occasionally, if they get busy at certain times, they put classical music on, which apparently has an effect of calming young people down and stops them being noisy. There's also significant experience in the McDonald's estate where customers are quieter when they leave than when they arrive. They tend to be satisfied, they've eaten, and they make less noise than perhaps when they're coming and their tummies are rumbling and they're waiting to be fed. So steps are in place to limit the noise, escape, and finally the protection of children from harm. Obviously, as with all of the licensing objectives, this is very important and is taken seriously by McDonald's, particularly as children frequent the restaurant. They are a large part of the customer base. There will be parts of the day, of course, when children will be the predominant users at the end of school, for example, but in the period when it's licensed between 11 p.m. and midnight, perhaps one would expect fewer children and certainly fewer unaccompanied children. The managers of McDonald's restaurants are trained in safeguarding and so are alert to distress or to any other signs that a child is perhaps in any trouble or any danger, and therefore will take the necessary steps. It isn't, and I don't think the objector is going so far as to say this, but it isn't the role of McDonald's to intervene where there's any child arriving after 11 p.m. in its restaurant. It may be that they've been sent in by an adult who's in the car park. It may be there may be a 17-year-old. There are all sorts of reasons why another child may be in the restaurant between 11 p.m. and midnight, and not all of them are worried about the age of the child. So the important point is, sorry, I'm getting an echo down the line. There we go, that's gone now. Because the staff training is there, they're able to spot the children that are exhibiting signs of distress and take the necessary action. So I think all of those measures, when they're all taken together, is indicative and provides the explanation as to why there are no objections from your consultees. There's no objections from police or environmental health. And this, just for confirmation, was confirmed earlier in the hearing, but is in the officer report at page, electronic bundles, paragraph 4.2, page 6 of your bundle. And there it's listed no objections from any of your the responsible authorities, and that I would submit is in part because of the experience of McDonald's and because of the measures which I've outlined to you. Of course, the representations need to be taken into account. I hope I've addressed many of their concerns. There is, of course, as with every licensed premise, the review procedure. And if the license is granted today, there is that procedure which can be used to further examine if there are any issues. We would hope, of course, there won't be any, but if there are measures and procedures in place for such a review. You've seen that the draft conditions are attached, to which there's no objection from my client. If there are any questions, of course, I'm happy to take them. I hopefully will be able to deal with them. There is also on the call Mr. Gallant, who is the fire safety and licensing officer for McDonald's, who may be able to deal with more detailed questions. But any questions you may have, we will happily respond to them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Robson. I'm assuming now it's for members of the committee to put forward any questions to Mr. Robson. Am I correct in that assumption?
Correct. Yes.
Fine, thank you. Right, members of the committee, have you any questions? Yes, please start, Mr. Rest, Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Just a very quick question. I have read through and I may have missed it. Your application is to extend the opening hours till midnight, 7 days a week. What time is the last meal served? And is your premises cleared fully by midnight?
I wasn't expecting to have to pass the book directly to Mr. Gallant so early, but you've asked a question which is beyond my knowledge of the restaurant. So if Mr. Gallant is on the line, he will be able to deal with that. The intention is, I think that it's cleared by midnight, so the last meal would be served to allow for the restaurant to be closed by midnight.
But is that displayed on a sign telling people when the last meal is served, like you do in a pub, etc., etc.?
It's not displayed as such, but they would be informed as they walked in at the time. With the staff safe that was mentioned earlier, there is a button on the staff safe that's pre-programmed to tell people, customers, that we will be closing in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So that makes them aware. Obviously, with the drive-through, you'd have to just stop the cars coming through the drive-through. But again,
yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yes, Lara.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify something. The application isn't to extend their opening hours until midnight. Their opening hours already 5 a.m. until midnight. The application is to be able to sell hot food and hot drink between the hours of 11 p.m. and midnight, because as soon as 11 p.m. comes round, the selling of hot food and hot drink becomes a licensable activity. That's the reason we're here today, because McDonald's want to be able to sell hot food and hot drink after the hour of 11 p.m. It's not to extend their opening hours. Their opening hours are already agreed by planning. So this is just for that one licensable activity between 11 p.m. and midnight. I hope that clarifies things for everybody.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lloyd, have you any questions to ask, please?
Yeah, I've just got a couple. I'd like to ask the applicant why they didn't put this application in with their original application. Why the extension now? And if you can bear with me, Chair, I have a couple of other questions after that.
Thank you.
So I think, as your officer just explained, this is not an extension. This is to license activities for a new restaurant. So it's the initial application. The planning permission has been secured to allow opening to midnight. This is the licensing application that follows the grant of planning consent to allow for hot food and drink to be served between 11 p.m. and midnight, which is the period where it becomes a licensable activity within our opening hours.
Yeah, thank you. Can you talk me through a scenario? So you take a phone call, or a local neighbour comes into the restaurant at 11:30 saying, I've just been woken up by a load of noisy people outside. How do you deal with that?
Mr. Gallant, this may be one for you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so obviously we take our neighbours' concerns seriously. The manager would go out and investigate where the noise was coming from and ask the people to be quiet. And hopefully that would resolve the issue. If not, he would take it further. Obviously, we've got number plates recognition sometimes in our car parks that may be employed, so we would know who the cars belong to. We often, with McDonald's, we have a relationship with our local police in terms of having a rapport with them. If it was a common nuisance and continued to be a nuisance and it was the same car every time, then we work with our police friends to get the person banned from the restaurant completely. And I think one of the things with banning someone is they lose face with their friends. If they can't, you know, it's a popular destination for most people. If they can't come in because they're banned, that means their friends would enjoy it and they can't. And peer pressure plays a big part in that.
Okay, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that you have a policy for banning people. That's where I was leading up to with this, actually. So you wouldn't hesitate to ban people, persistent offenders, or people that were abusive or whatever? No,
our policy is to, you know, McDonald's is not the big company. It's a franchise-based company, if you like. So there would be a local franchisee that would be responsible for this particular branch. His point is to be in the community. We don't want to be centrally controlling what happens in the restaurant. We want it to be locally controlled. So the franchisee would work with any community people that liaise with them, the local police authorities. But the manager understands that his restaurant is in a community and it's his job to be part of that community and to help and support wherever he can.
Okay. Mr. Robson referred to a review process that could occur. So I'd like to know, Laura's got her hand up. Go for it, Laura.
If I could just explain briefly the review process. Once a premises has been awarded with a premises licence, if we receive complaints about that premises from responsible authorities, i.e. police, fire, trading standards, that there are issues with that premises, they can call what is called a review, which brings the premises licence back in front of a panel like yourselves of the licensing subcommittee to be reviewed. Now, local residents can also do this as well. It can only be done once in a 12-month period, but it pulls into question the licence that was issued, and it gives the licensing subcommittee an opportunity to review all the evidence and take action if necessary. It's a process like this. Notices would have to be placed on the premises that there is a review under place, and ultimately the licence could be taken away. So it is it can only be done once a licence has been issued, but you could do everything from take no action at all because there isn't evidence to do so. There could be extra conditions attached to the licence, or as I say, it could lead to a revocation of a licence due to whatever reason the review has been called. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Laura. So as far as local residents go, what is the process that they should follow? Do they go through the restaurant or do they come through to NNDC?
In the first instance, if they've got issues with the restaurant themselves, I would probably take it up with them. Personally, I would take it up with the management of the restaurant, because if the restaurant don't know that there's an issue, then they can't do anything to fix it. If that then continues to persist, then the route would then be to come through to the local authority or to the police and make complaints. All of that information will be collated, and they will be asked if they want to call a review. Or if there is lots of evidence that is antisocial behaviour and the police have been involved, then the police can call a review. So there's lots of routes into the review process, but if the residents have got issues, in my personal opinion, the first person to speak to would be the restaurant owners themselves, because if they aren't aware that there is an issue, then there's nothing that they can do about it to solve it.
Yeah, and if they're not satisfied, then they can escalate up to yourselves. Yeah.
Then they can escalate it through up into the licensing authority, the police, etc., etc.
Okay, thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is really nitpicky, and the other one is a little bit more serious. Mr. Robson, you implied that there would be some sort of potentially background music, i.e. classical music, to calm the youth that come in between midnight, 11 o'clock and midnight. However, in the document supplied to us, it said the provision of recorded music was actually ticked no. So which is correct, please?
If it's ticked no on the application, then that you should go with that. I was perhaps misspeaking about a more general policy that I know exists around the McDonald's estate. I'm just finding the application form now, if you bear with me, Chair.
Yeah, it's on page 22, provision of recorded music. It was ticked no, but as I said, you were potentially implying that there was recorded music. I was just seeking clarification on that.
As the person who made the application from Shoesmith Solicitors, can I just come in there? The reason that the playing of recorded music wasn't ticked is because it's incidental music, it's background music. So it's not the reason that people go into the restaurant. So it's not classed as a licensable activity because it's background music. People don't go into McDonald's to listen to music, they go in to purchase food. So that's why it's always ticked no for recorded music, because it's not like they're putting on a DJ or something like that. It's just background music. That's the reason.
Okay, thank you. I was just seeking clarification. Yeah, sure, it wasn't nitpicking there at all.
That's fine.
And my other question is related to page 27 with regards to protection of children from harm. The sentence you say, we do, however, take safety extremely seriously and will continue to employ the same practices to ensure they are protected. Could you give some sort of examples of the sort of practices that you would employ to protect children, please?
Chair, those are the training courses that I mentioned earlier, in that the managers, as part of the curriculum that they receive, includes safeguarding training. There is also the provision of training to other members of staff that, whilst perhaps not as comprehensive as the training that's given to managers, it is sufficient to allow them to recognise distress and to understand, perhaps most importantly, what actions to take, which can be as much as just simply asking a straightforward question to check a child is okay, and obviously all the way through to the more serious of involving the police. What is important to remember is that you have to plan for the worst, but often it's a straightforward situation of just speaking to them, providing a service, making sure that they're okay, and perhaps letting them calm down. Of course, if it is the worst situation, then we have the procedures in place and the manager training to mean that we can work with our partners in the police to address the problem. But more often than not, it's the lower level form of intervention of checking that the child is okay and that they know why they're there, perhaps unaccompanied at 11:30 at night.
Thank you very much. Do Councillor Rest, yes, I was going to say Councillor Rest or Councillor Lloyd, do they have additional questions, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can I just get a little bit more clarification about when people will be leaving the restaurant, particularly coming up to midnight? What signage or advice is given about keeping the noise down? Obviously, we don't want people bibbing hooters at one another for saying goodnight, etc., etc. Now, I presume you have a policy within your car parking areas. The standard one normally used to say, you know, please leave the premises quietly, respect other people, etc., etc. Are these going to be provided and quite prominent signage? I believe the gentleman over in the mark is willing to answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we would put signage up if required. In this case, because of the closeness of the residential, it would be a given that we'd have to put some form of signage up for the people in the cars, and possibly at the exit of the restaurant as they leave, just to say, please be noticeable of the local residents and keep the noise down.
So can I say that you will be putting those up? I think you said you might, but you will be.
No, obviously certain locations don't require it. Depends where they are. So in this particular case, we would be putting signs up saying, when you leave, please make sure you leave quietly, both on the entrance door and then the car park.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Lloyd, do you have any further follow-up questions at all?
No, thank you, Chair.
Fine, thank you. Ms. Mashonga, what's the next phase in the process, please?
The next stage is for the other persons to put forward any representations. I'm not sure if Miss Gary Collinson or the other John Simmons would like to put forward any oral representations at all.
Thank you. Mr. Collinson, would you like to speak, please? You're on mute. No, still can't hear you.
That's it.
I think I've done it right now.
Okay, fine. Yes, we can now. Thank you.
Apologies. Morning, everyone. Our garden backs onto Middlebrook. So we do have concerns with regard to the noise. There are some caravan sites and camping sites that lead off from Middlebrook Road. So the natural route for people would be to leave McDonald's, walk along Middlebrook past our garden, off to the caravan sites. So our first concern is that if you're serving food up until midnight, it will be late into the evening that people will be walking by. I appreciate what you said earlier on that people have eaten and they're a little bit quieter because they've got a full stomach, I believe you said. But you do also offer a takeaway service, so they may not actually have eaten that food, they're actually carrying it past towards the caravan. So that's our first concern, is that we could be disturbed after 11 p.m. We have one other concern with regard to the car park. May I ask a question? Will it be locked once the restaurant is closed at midnight?
Fine, thank you very much. Mr. Robson.
Firstly, with regard to noise, you've heard the Chair, the submissions made already in terms of how we would seek to control noise, with the addition of the sign following the points raised by Councillor Rest. Of course, we want to minimise and ideally completely eradicate any disturbance to our neighbours, and we'll continue to strive to work with them to ensure that there is no disruption between the hours of 11 and midnight. I think that the measures that we've got in place in terms of general noise escape, in terms of the messaging to our customers, will all serve to minimise any potential disturbance to our neighbours. As I've said earlier, if there is the licence is granted and there are issues between us, of course, that the door is always open, and our manager will be more than happy to discuss with them any other steps which we may take. As I think Mr. Gallant said, the intention of McDonald's is not to just sit and plonk itself within a community and extract money from people's pockets. It seeks to take a more active role in that community. And we will do better as a business if we're able to get on with our neighbours. So there is a mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship between the company, the franchisee and our neighbours. If we are all able to get on, then our neighbours are happier and we're able to make more money and provide a better service, which is fundamentally the role of the business.
Thank you, Mr. Robson.
Sorry,
Could we ask?
I was just going to say, do you have a supplementary question, please?
So the question about the car park is whether it will be locked once the restaurant's locked, because we have a concern that it will be somewhere that people can pull into for antisocial behaviour. Both myself and my husband are retired police officers, so that we do have experience of this sort of thing. And these sort of sites, bearing in mind it's slightly out of town, they are a bit of a magnet for youngsters to pull into for drug taking and antisocial behaviour.
And as it is a takeaway area, once your restaurant closes at midnight, if the car park isn't secured, you'll have the cars sitting in the car park eating their food with their stereos playing within the cars.
Yeah, so due to the location, so I don't know for definite if it has a barrier yet. However, that isn't an issue. We can put one in if that's one of your concerns, because I agree with what you're saying. You know, normally we don't put concern because most of our restaurants drive through 24/7, so it's not necessarily part of having a barrier installed at that stage. But I agree with what you're saying in this case. The other part of it is that we have other tools in our box, if you like, for that, in terms of we can install, the franchisee can install if he wants to, if he's having issues with people parking there for long periods, a 90-minute ANPR camera system. So again, that would control the amount of time that anyone was staying in the car park, because you obviously have all their details. And also from a CCTV point of view, the CCTV that is outside the building is obviously of a night line capability. So with low level light, it still gives a perfect picture. So again, we'd be able to see if anything was going on that shouldn't be going on. But I can definitely get the barrier installed if that's something that would waylay your fear. I agree with you what you're saying.
Yeah, that would solve an issue of people parking and eating outside after midnight.
And also it's nipping it in the bud before it starts, and then people have to start complaining, at least if we address it beforehand.
Most people, once the restaurant closes at 12, the restaurant will still be occupied till probably about 1:30, while they do the deep clean down and get it all ready for the next day's shift, which starts in the morning. So yeah, that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Collinson. Is there anybody else that would like a question? I saw Andreas, Councillor, you see me, please ask a question.
Yes, can you hear me? I've been listening very carefully. Most of my questions that I was going to ask have been answered already. And I'm delighted that Mr. Robson and Mr. Gallant have already covered various aspects that we've already discussed, including the barrier. I think that might be a good idea. Mr. and Mrs. Collinson mentioned this. I think it's a very good idea, and I think Mr. Gallant agreed. I'm also delighted that everything will be done, and of course, indeed, it will be for the good of the restaurant and the community. I am delighted that you mentioned the scenario as a community and not just as a restaurant. Needless to say, that's what I expected. Being in the catering business myself for many, many years, it's the right thing to do, and I'm delighted with this. I think the more things that are covered now before any decision is made will be good. And I'm delighted also that there is room for scope to look at things if they go wrong, so we can all work together to put it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. You see me. Anybody else? Any questions? Yes. Mr. Simons, please. You're on mute, Mr. Simons.
Yeah, I'm just okay.
Thank you.
My complaint that I put in, or my concerns, are exactly the same as Mr. and Mrs. Collinson. Middlebrook Road runs right behind my house, and we do get a lot of noise from the caravan site up behind us, which is rather large, and quite a number of caravan fields, and we can hear the people walking along the back of the lane right through the evening, and it is quite loud because we've got 3 bedrooms that face onto the back of that road. But as I say, you've answered that. I know McDonald's have got no control over anybody outside their vicinity, but that is one of our main concerns, that it is quite noisy with people, even when they try to talk quietly, you can still hear the noise of them walking by, and I think that was our main concern. But other than that, I think Mr. and Mrs. Collinson's covered all the other issues that we had. So I've got nothing more to say.
Thank you very much. Any further observation, Mr. Robson, on that particular item? Or Mr. Gallant?
No, thank you, Chair. I think you've heard our comments. Mr. Gallant, I don't know if you have anything further.
No.
I have nothing else to add to that.
Okay, Mr. Rest, Councillor Rest, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just come back with one other observation, please?
course you may.
It's really to Mr. Robson. This operation, there's an echo somewhere, sorry. This operation of the business between 11 o'clock and midnight, presumably from McDonald's point of view, you've made a business case for this, and you would have some estimate of how many people you think might use that facility for that last hour between 11 and midnight. Are you able to share that with us, please?
Sorry, Councillor, I have no instructions about any business case with regard to that extension.
Okay. So are you saying McDonald's are taking a risk and just opening up for another hour? Hopefully people will come past. You've got no indication of what you expect from your other restaurant in other areas, how many people use it between 11 and midnight?
I've no doubt, Councillor, that McDonald's have undergone a business assessment. What I'm saying is that I don't have any instructions on it.
Okay.
And without instructions or knowledge, I'm afraid I can't really help you.
Okay. Any of your colleagues able to?
Yeah, the issue is it's not so, every location is different, so you don't know what you're going to get. Some places you think are going to be busier than they are, and some are not. So the model that we have doesn't really work in terms of, it gives us a rough idea, but nothing substantial. The planning we have is till 12. We respect what the planning gave us. We obviously want to operate as fully as we can within that planning regime. But it may be ultimately the franchisee's decision, if there isn't any volume there or any money coming in at that stage, to close earlier, because it's not worth his while to stay open a lot later, because you still got all the overheads. So he will make it, and knowing Chroma as I do, and I only know it from when I visited it on the holidays and things like that. It's predominantly a summertime seaside resort, isn't it? I mean, it's quite a low population, and it will be busier during the summer. So it may be that during the summer he stays till 12, and during the winter times he closes at 10. But we won't know until we see what the pattern is that arrives at the site. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Gallant. Lara, please.
Hello, I just wanted to make a further point. This application that is being put in front of the licensing subcommittee today is for the sale of hot food and hot drink after 11 p.m. until the hour of midnight. The planning permission has already been given for the restaurant to remain open until midnight. So that is their opening hours, 5 a.m. till midnight. That doesn't preclude McDonald's from selling cold food or cold drink after 11, because that's not a licensable activity. The licensable activity is the sale of hot food and hot drink after 11 p.m. at night. So I just wanted to make that point, that McDonald's, their opening hours are until midnight. And unless there is a business case that it's not worth their while to stay open, as has already been mooted, they can still serve cold food and cold drinks after 11 p.m. because that's not a licensable activity.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? So, Andreas, yes.
I think Mrs. Collinson wanted to say something. You put your hand up, didn't you? Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I was only going to ask, or I was only going to observe that most places around here close between either 10 or 11 o'clock for serving hot food. There's only a couple of places down at the front. I believe one of them's a pizza place and a kebab place. So I was only going to add, I just wondered what the need was for McDonald's to be open till 12. But actually, I believe Lara has answered the question anyway, because the planning application's already been in place for it to be open until midnight anyway, whether it's serving cold food. So it's probably an irrelevant question.
Thank you for that. Looking around, there doesn't seem to be any additional questions. could you now advise me where we go from here, please?
I don't know if any of the parties involved would like to sort of do a sum up of any points if they already haven't, or if they don't wish to, that's fine as well.
Chair, on behalf of the appellant, I think you have our points. Obviously, we're here to answer any questions you may have outstanding. The details, I think, have been drawn to your attention already. Thank you. Thank you,
and thank you for answering all the questions from both our committee and from members of the public, and also other councillors. Thank you. And the next stage now is, please.
The panel is to inquire and consider the application and then to make a decision. And as I explained earlier, as today's proceedings are remote, the licensing officer, the democratic services officers, the applicant and all the other persons in today's meeting, they may be asked to exit the Zoom meeting. And as the panel's legal advisor, I will not be exiting the meeting, and I'll be joining the subcommittee during that deliberation and provide any relevant advice surrounding the 4 licensing objectives. And as I explained, I'll not be taking part in the actual decision making. However, I'll be helping the panel assisting the panel with the formulation of facts and reasoning for their decision. So that's it.
Thank you. So I'm assuming non-committee members will be placed into the waiting room. Is that correct?
I think everyone on this panel, besides the subcommittee, they can sort of exit the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I just want to confirm how the procedure works. So if we leave, will we be invited back to hear your decision?
So as I explained earlier, but it probably seems like it's an hour ago now and we've covered quite a lot of ground. So all parties will receive written notification of the decision within 5 working days as set out in the legislation as well. So following everyone exiting this meeting, there won't be any further communication until the letter within 5 working days.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which is really unusual, because normally if we were sitting live in the council chamber, we would retire, discuss, come back and give everybody the decision. So it just means you have to wait for 5 days.
But I'm assuming, Chair, that there would be no issue with us contacting the licensing officer. Once you've made your decision is made.
That is correct. My understanding is that the applicant would be notified in writing anyhow, but I'm assuming within 5 days there would be nothing stopping you ringing the council to find out what the decision is prior to you receiving the response in the mail.
Thank you, Chair.
I think that's correct.
It is.
Fine, thank you. So first, let me take this opportunity to thank everybody for their input. As noted, the decision will be mailed out in 5 days. The committee members, Councillor Rest, Councillor Lloyd and myself will stay here, and I would like to thank everybody